Week 9 of the NFL season is the War Room, powered by Pro Football Focus and brought to you by DraftKings.com. I'm Jeff Ratcliffe in the saddle, a little late, better late than never. It's Pat Thorman here with me, and Pat, it is always a technological struggle, I guess, to get these things up and running. I don't know why. It's one thing one week, then another the next week, and this week it was a slow computer that put the brakes on. But we're going to go 5 minutes over time. I know some of you guys are probably like, well, what the heck? You guys are shortchanged now. We'll go a little overtime today to make sure that everybody gets all their questions answered. If you are watching on the YouTube feed, of course, you can try and tweet at us. Just use the hashtag War Room, and we'll get to all of your questions there. And we're going to start rolling. But, Pat, some inactive news, I guess you said, coming in right before the show started?
Yeah, it looks like Jamie Collins for the Pats is inactive. He has an illness of some kind. And that's good news for Jordan Reed. He's a super athletic linebacker. The Pats have done a great job on tight ends, and they still do have good safeties. Pat Chung does a good job on tight ends. But that's a big obstacle that Reed doesn't have to clear anymore. So I would definitely recommend bumping him up a little bit.
Yeah, and a game that we said this on the Roto Grinder show, and if you're really interested in DFS, check out that Roto Grinder show that Jody Smith and I do with Britt Devine on Thursday nights. Awesome show, but I basically said, you're going to be, if you roll the dice on Cousins and GPP, if you roll the dice on Jordan Reed, even in cash, I like Jordan Reed in cash games as well, but you could be sitting there after the first half being like, what did I do to myself? And then everything goes better in the second half because the Patriots are going to be pretty stifling, at least initially. But what the numbers have shown is as soon as they get the lead, they ease off. Go figure. And a lot of points can be scored for fantasy purposes. Also inactive for you IDP folks, Robert Quinn and TJ McDonald. That's not good for the Rams defense. Of course, Michael Kendrick's little brother Eric, also inactive this week for the Vikings in that game, so a lot of players out. But Pat, we're already starting to get some questions in here. Maybe we'll hit those up, and then we'll go through the inactive report. But George says he has a question here. Half-point PPR, Martavis Bryant, Chris Ivory, or Allen Robinson, and he says Revis Island. Well, we're actually getting an indication that no, probably not. That the Jets are essentially equating Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns, they're both equal to them, so they're not going to give one the star treatment. So we could see Revis on both of these players. Revis could just end up playing a side. So I don't know if I would worry too much about that one. But for me, regardless, Pat, I think the answer here, I'm going to go with Martavis Bryant. I think that he's actually got wide receiver 1 upside. Chris Ivory, certainly could be a case made for him, but I really like Martavis Bryant this week.
I'll make the case for Ivory. I think he's a little bit. He's got a higher floor than Martavis, especially in a half PPR. Mangold's back this week. It's not a tough assignment running against the Jags. They should be winning. He should get game script on the side in the second half. Martavis has definitely got the higher ceiling, and he can blow up. That's going to be a pass first game for sure. Definitely have him in a number of GPP lineups. But I agree. It's between those two. Even with Revis potentially playing aside, if Allen Robinson starts going off, they could always just shadow him at that point. He's done it before. He's a vet. That won't be a problem. So I say Ivory for safety, Bryant for upside.
Yeah. Risk reward, exactly. I probably should have made that clear. Also, you asked George about Michael Kendricks or Jordan Hicks. This one is not even close. It's Michael Kendricks. Jordan Hicks is only going to be playing in the base defense. That's the indication we're getting here with Kiko Alonso back. I tweeted out this week and caught some flack for it, but I'm going to stand by this. I'm not ranking Kiko Alonso. Kiko Alonso should not be on fantasy rosters outside of dynasty leagues right now, and in those cases, deeper dynasty leagues, he should be on the bench, not in your starting lineups this week. John has a question. Sammy Watkins, T.Y. Hilton. Well, T.Y. Hilton's sounding on the wrong side of questionable right now, so it comes down to Sammy Watkins or Devontae Adams. Pat, Devontae Adams is going to see Josh Norman, so as banged up as Sammy Watkins has been this season, you like the fact that he's going to be the primary target here with Percy Harvin now on injured reserve. For me, I think this one's pretty clear. It's Sammy Watkins.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Moving on, Des Bryant or Dion Lewis in a PPR. That's intriguing. Des Bryant has historically torched the Eagles, but then again, he's done so with Tony Romo as his quarterback. Dion Lewis is interesting here. I suspect this is going to be one of those games where we do see a lot of LeGarrette Blount in the second half. I think Blount is a guy who, especially on FanDuel, if you want to make a GPP lineup with a massive ceiling, Blount could be a play there. But for me, I guess this is really close. I'm going to lean Dion Lewis. It's so close though, Pat.
Yeah, I agree. Lewis is the more sure thing. I mean, Dez is Dez. He's great. He's got a matchup advantage on Byron Maxwell, and he has toasted the Eagles in the past. Although that's Bradley Fletcher. I think he caught 3 against him in one game last year. But he's got Matt Castle. It's tough to trust it in a PPR. I mean, I don't know how many passes are you going to throw to him. Even if it's 10, he completes half of them. You got 5. There's not a big, huge ceiling there. So I think I'm going with Lewis as well.
All right, we'll move on to Joshua Fisher here saying that he has a quarterback dilemma. I don't think this is much of a dilemma. He's asking Peyton Manning or Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck's going up against one of the best defenses we've seen in the last half decade. So for me, Peyton Manning pretty easily, Pat.
I agree, and he's, like you said before, he's probably going to be without T.Y. Hilton. So that's more of the ghost of Andre Johnson out there. So yeah, Peyton's the play.
All right, so Robert has a question as well. Antonio Gates or Stevie Johnson in the flex. I'm leaning Stevie Johnson. Sherrick McManus, get this stat. I love this one. He's given up 5 receiving touchdowns so far this year, and he covers the slot, which is where we'll see Stevie in 3 wide sets. Now, this is not just one flukishly bad game. He's consistently bad. He's given up a touchdown in 5 of 7 games this year. I love Stevie Johnson this week.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Gates is a fine play as well. Those two are both going to probably take over most of Keenan Allen's targets. Those are the type of routes that they run in the same areas of the field. But Stevie's going to be pretty heavily targeted, and it's a great matchup.
Martavis Bryant, Eric Decker, Michael Crabtree. I love Crabtree this week, but I still think Martavis Bryant is the play. Crabtree, though, it's one of those, I guess, higher floor plays. I still think he's solid wide receiver 2 this week, but Martavis Bryant just a massive ceiling in a really plus matchup.
Yeah, I agree. Decker gets a little bump. It looks like Fitzpatrick's going to be fine. I guess he was catching passes in warm-ups, which shows his non-throwing hand is okay enough. But yeah, Martavis' ceiling is enormous.
Andrew Luck or Kirk Cousins? It's come to this.
Oh man.
Oh boy. You know what? I actually picked up Kirk Cousins in I think it was the flex league.
I saw that. Yep.
So our buddy Jake Seeley's flex leagues. I have Russell Wilson, so needed to do something, and it's a 14-teamer. There aren't a lot of options. Cousins has a high ceiling. Boy, oh boy. I don't know if I can bring myself to start him over Andrew Luck. I'm still going to go Luck here. I think that you have that potential upside in garbage time. It might be really ugly, but we've seen that when they decide to go hurry up and actually use the offense that they built, go figure, they score points. So I am going to lean Luck. I'm not crazy about it, but I am leaning Luck.
Yeah, and that's a good point about the hurry up. That was actually the one thing he did well last week. He was actually pretty efficient when they went no huddle. But I'm gonna go with Cousins. I mean, like you said, it's ugly. Both of these guys are going to be ugly. And now you got that Denver defense on the turf, so they're going to be even faster getting after him. Their offensive line's awful, and Luck's been a turnover machine. So Cousins will be as well. But I think there's a greater chance of garbage time with Cousins.
And we're getting a question here about Bryce Callahan, whether or not that moves the needle for Stevie Johnson if he's in there covering the slot. No, I mean, I'm not really too worried about a young corner playing the slot here. I expect this to be a high-scoring game. This could be a game where Stevie Johnson, would not shock me, sees over 10 targets. He's going to really replace he's not the exact same player, but potentially the production of Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen light, let's put it that way. Still have him as a rock-solid wide receiver 2, and would not be surprised he finds the end zone, maybe puts up wide receiver 1 numbers. You basically build your lineups. You go, all right, Antonio Freeman, Mark Ingram, Stevie Johnson, let's build the rest of the lineups this week for DFS purposes. But either way, let's continue on here, Pat, and let's start to look through some of these active inactives. Getting pretty much most of the information here. Looking to Green Bay really quickly, so we'll go Green Bay, Carolina to start things off. Seeing, Ty Montgomery, of course, is going to be inactive here, and we knew that one was coming. Clay Matthews active, a little dinged up, but no worries. You're starting him in IDP leagues. But the question here is Josh Norman, and obviously, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to see Devontae Adams very likely. Do you have any worries starting Randall Cobb this week?
No, I'm actually excited to start Randall Cobb this week. He's got a good matchup against Benet Ben-Wickery, and the offense is going to have to run through him. I mean, Eddie Lacy hasn't been running well. Both sides, even Charles Tillman on James Jones in the battle, the old man battle. That Tillman's been playing well. So if they're going to score, I think their projected totals 24 points. If they're going to score, it's going to come through the slot, and it's not a bad bet to go with Aaron Rodgers in a bounce back game, and he's going to be using Cobb quite a bit. So I like Cobb. I think he's a sneaky play this week.
Yeah, definitely firing him up wherever I have him. We have a question on Twitter from Giles. Remember, #WarRoom. We'll get to those questions on Twitter here, and he's asking in a standard scoring league. Thanks for not calling it non-PPR. Woodhead or Eric Decker. And it's always tricky when you deal with running back, wide receivers. And, typically, though, I do lean towards the running backs in these situations. But I don't know. I think I might roll the dice on Decker here. I'm curious your thoughts on this one, Pat.
Yeah, they seem like they really want to get Gordon going. It's not a great matchup. The Bears' run defense has been actually kind of good, which we're not used to seeing. And Decker looks fine. Like you mentioned before, with Fitzpatrick, looks like he's okay. He's got a good matchup in Jacksonville. So I see the Chargers throwing the ball a lot more. So I don't know. I think I would go with Decker and expect maybe a few more carries for Gordon than we're used to seeing.
Yeah, that's just the drawback there is that Gordon has been getting involved, and all it takes is that one big run, and then it's the old hot hand, and then where did Woodhead go, and then he's only in on third downs, and the volume might not be there. The other question that Giles had is Allen Robinson or Willie Snead. That's a close one. I actually have these guys 2 spots apart. I do have the edge to Allen Robinson. The ceiling slightly higher. I know, worse matchup, of course, but I still am just going to give him the slight edge. It's super close, though. And it is PPR, by the way.
That is really close. And like you mentioned before, if they play sides, if the Jets play sides, that gives Robinson a little more clearance, at least early in the game. And I see the Saints running the ball. I love Ingram this week. The Titans can't stop the run. Their pass defense has been sneaky good. So yeah, I would side with Robinson, but like you said, it's pretty close.
All right, nothing really on the Panther side of note. No, nothing really note for. You know who you're starting. You know who you're not starting really for the Panthers. But let's go to this Rams game. Already mentioned that defensively, they're banged up. They're without Robert Quinn, Chris Long, and T.J. McDonald. So certainly you like that for Adrian Peterson. But on the other side of the ball, Eric Kendricks out. But that's really it. Nothing really else stands out. Stephon Diggs dealing with a minor hamstring injury. He's active. And I guess that's the question I want to ask you, Pat. Does Stephon Diggs come back to earth this week for you, or do you still see him as a viable wide receiver too?
Oh, I like some other receivers better than him this week. It is a tough matchup, even though they are banged up, and even though they are on the road, the Rams certainly play a lot better. Their defense plays a lot better at home. But I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. That both teams are going to play it on the ground. I think is Floyd missing for Minnesota as well.
Yeah, Tom Johnson's going to start again.
I think it's a good matchup for Gurley. It's an improving matchup for Adrian Peterson, and both coaches, are pretty conservative. So I think it's a low over/under game as well. I wouldn't be targeting either passing game.
Brian in the chat here. Remember, if you're a subscriber, you can get access to the Hangout itself. Of course, you can always watch us on YouTube. But Brian asking LeGarrette Blount or Jarvis Landry in a standard scoring league. I understand Blunt here potentially, but it is still risky. Whereas I don't think we have that risk with Jarvis Landry. I like Landry's floor as opposed to Blunt's floor. Blunt may have the higher ceiling, but if you're going for that higher floor play, I would lean Landry. I understand the case could be made for LeGarrette Blunt, though. Pat, do you agree? Disagree?
I agree. I think you nailed it. Landry's floor is higher. Blunt's floor is, say the Skins hang around for a little while, he doesn't get too much work in the first half, and he doesn't score. So I mean, you can run for 55, 60 yards and no scores in a standard league. You're hurting. But ceiling wise, I certainly think Blunt is the play, especially in standard, because Landry is not a huge red zone guy. So yeah, I would floor Landry, ceiling Blunt.
All right, and this is a time of year where you do have to make those considerations, the ceiling floor considerations. We're getting closer to that playoff push, and if you're still watching this, then you're in the hunt. Certainly the viewership is tailing off at this time of year, but hey, we still talk DFS, and the best part about DFS is you can play up into the games before the Super Bowl, so continuing to play there. Moving to this Jags-Jets game, and nothing, we've already talked about the inactive actors. I mean, I guess I should mention for the Jets, Pat, you said Fitzpatrick in, good, thank you. Brandon Marshall, good, thank you, he's playing. Chris Ivory banged up, but he's playing. Eric Decker banged up, but he's playing. All these guys are in, so no worries there. Geno Smith active too, so there's that. And deep leaguers, maybe dynasty leaguers, you want to get a little bit more scouting on Devin Smith. He is going to be active in this one. He was a little banged up as well. Calvin Pryor, inactive on the defensive side of the ball. This is a week to start David Harris, okay? David Harris. This is a plus matchup plus a favorable home stats crew. That's like the perfect storm for IDP production. But I guess, Pat, thoughts and expectations just in general for Fitzpatrick, this passing offense, because you already gave your thoughts on Chris Ivory earlier.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, it's a plus matchup. Bilal Powell also is inactive, so that gives Ivory a little bit of a boost as well. But yeah, no, they both receivers have good matchups. Fitzpatrick is he's underrated, but I still like playing him. Especially you throw in one of those double stacks with Fitzpatrick and Decker and Marshall in there, and in a low entry GPP, and just kind of see what happens. But on the other side of the ball is going to be interesting. I wrote up Julius Thomas this week. The Jets blitz a ton. They blitz 42% of the time. And against the blitz, Bortles is okay, but you're 6 or 7 throwing to Julius already for 67 yards and a touchdown. And like you said, Pryor is going to be out for the Jets as well. So I think Julius is a sneaky play on the DFS this week. And if you're debating him or another mid-range or back-end tight end one, I would throw Julius to start.
Marcus Williams is going to be starting, and you have Marcus Gilchrist there. I mean, a lot. It's not as consistent covering tight ends as we might see with cornerbacks. We can predict those a little bit better. Sometimes tight ends will line up against the linebacker and the safety, and it's very rare that they'll say, okay, well, and we've seen this with Gronk in the past, though, where okay, he's covering Gronk. Well, so it's not going to really be the case today with Julius Thomas, but plus matchups across the board there. So that's an intriguing one. That's one I actually really didn't think much about, but I might have to in this last hour or so. Temptations to create more lineups. Gotta love it. But anyway, moving to the Washington-New England contest, if you want to call it that. And Deshaun Jackson's going to be back, finally. I had a little, I sort of bounced around and kind of was like, what do I do with this guy for ranking purposes, and kind of settled in as a borderline wide receiver too. We know the upside's there, but the floor with Jackson, any of these big play receivers, is always lower than what you have with the heavily targeted receivers. But you like the fact that the game script could be in his favor. So I don't know what your thoughts are on Jackson today.
Yeah, I'm in the same general back end wide receiver 2, high upside wide receiver 3 flex area with him, and then the floor is 0 with him. I mean, he pulls his hamstring again, which is obviously a recurrent injury. he can get a 0 for you. But yeah, like you said, the game script sets up fine. I have a feeling they might throw like the kid Coleman on him, a young cornerback who has only really defended on the perimeter and has stuck with some speedy receivers in the past. But the Djax is a vet, so he can definitely pop one on him. So yeah, he's the ultimate boomer bust play. If I'm desperate and my matchup looks like I need some upside, I wouldn't hesitate to throw him in there.
Now, Jamie Collins is going to be out, we mentioned earlier. John Bostic? We could see some John Bostic. People are foaming at the mouth already. Anytime I mention John Bostic, people go absolutely nuts. So we could see a little John Bostic in this one. Curious I definitely would expect that over Gerard Mayo. The team seems to have soured a little bit on Mayo. And Bostic was the one who came in for Jamie Collins in their last game. So we'll see if that's actually something that plays out. Not starting this guy. Not starting him, but very intriguing if we get a full look at him in a Bill Belichick defense. Titans Saints, Marcus Mariota active. We figured that one. Jason McCourty inactive, so that's good for the Saints. Parrish Cox will be active, though, so you get sort of one for the other. But Mariota plus matchup DFS play. Onto the New Orleans side, we mentioned Willie Snead is active, Marcus Colston active, Danielle Ellerbe inactive. Luke McCown, this does not sound good for Luke McCown, which, hey, he is what he is, but when he got called up to active duty there, he did a pretty good job running the offense, but that's not a good situation. Not something that anybody really cares about for fantasy purposes. Haloi Kakaha, I said that right, is out as well. So banged up defense here at the linebacker position especially. Something to take advantage of when you're looking at your tight ends this week. Delanie Walker, a player who I like in DFS. Pat, anything about this game stick out to you?
Yeah, like you said before, I think Mariota is a sneaky GPP play. You can certainly pair him with Walker, like you said. You can throw a dart, and Dorial Green-Beckham is going to get a little bit more work, it seems, under the new coaching regime. Kendall Wright is out. Justin Hunter is going to take his place, but I think the ship has sailed on Justin Hunter. Watch him score 2 touchdowns now that I said that. But yeah, no, I think Mariota take a shot at him. One of these weeks he's going to run. I don't know if this is the week coming back from injury, but one of these weeks he's going to put up a nice game on the ground, and it's going to catch everyone by surprise. So keep him in your thoughts for the cheap GPPs.
Moving to Buffalo, and we have Tyrod Taylor, Sammy Watkins active. No surprises there. No surprise inactives either. Tyrod Taylor, cheap for DFS purposes, somebody who you might want to look at. Saves you some cat room if you really want to stack your lineup at the other positions. Don't have a Dolphins report in my file right now, but I'll keep an eye on this if it does come through. No worries there. We can talk about this Pittsburgh game here coming down the home stretch. And I just got the Dolphins. Devontae Parker inactive, so we're not going to see him. Otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. So, no major concerns there. But I do want to talk about the Steelers and the Raiders, and something that sticks out to me immediately, Pat. Nyron Ball is inactive, and a lot of people are like, who cares? Well, I think you should care because this is their sub-package nickel linebacker. This is the guy who's been coming on for Curtis Lofton. Curtis Lofton has been a complete liability. If they have to use Curtis Lofton every down today, he may rack up some tackles, but he's going to get torched, absolutely torched. Keith Miller, D'Angelo Williams. I mean, this could be a really big day for these guys. Because Nyron Ball, a rookie, but he's been playing very well and has done the part. He's effective in coverage. And then on the other side, of course, really nothing of note except Stephon Tuitt will be back. Stephon Tuitt, that will downgrade, in my take, downgrades Latavius Murray. Any thoughts about this game, Pat?
Yeah, I expect Pittsburgh to win the game. I mean, it's a tough spot for the Raiders, coming across country, playing an early game at 1 o'clock, coming off a big win at home against the Jets last week. I don't see Murray being able to run very well. I like some garbage time work for certainly Cooper and Crabtree and Carr. But on the flip side, I absolutely love Roethlisberger this week. Hopefully, last week's hiccup, Russ keeps his ownership low for DFS this week. I don't see Steelers able to run very well. Run defense has been excellent. Dan Williams has been awesome for them on the line. So they're going to throw, and they got a great matchup everywhere you look, basically. And so, like you mentioned, Heath Miller and D'Angelo Williams kind of you keep the pressure off. Roethlisberger did not do well when pressured last week. He didn't get pressure very often when they used the hurry up, so I expect to see some of that again this week as well. You can pretty much stack Roethlisberger with any one of his receivers, and you're in good shape. I am all about the Pittsburgh passing game this week.
Yeah, and so am I. And coming down the home stretch here, Joseph Jones has a question about Jason Verrett. Dealing with a groin injury, and Jason Verrett's been very good this year. It's been a tough matchup. We looked at this as a potential downgrade for Alshon Jeffrey. Despite the fact that Alshon Jeffrey sees tons of targets, he's Jay Cutler's new favorite receiver, and we know what Jay Cutler does when he likes a receiver. But yes, to answer the question, is he a good play in DFS? He is. He's not elite price. He's not over 8,000 on FanDuel. I think he's actually just under 7,900. So he's pretty close, but still the target volume should be there, and in a projected high-scoring game. I do like that. Plus, you can storm up the leaderboard on Monday night. One quick one here for Jimmy Johansson, and then we'll have to wrap things up. And he needs 2 for a PPR, Pat. And I'll toss this to you. Lamar Miller, Langford, or McFadden. I think McFadden's a lock, but I don't know what your thoughts are here.
Yeah, McFadden's just going to get a ton of work. They don't want to use Kristen Michael. They made that pretty obvious. No one's talking about Lamar Miller this week. Even last week when you didn't do anything against the Patriots, he still got 20 touches. That's 3 weeks in a row now. They've really gone heavy with him. I think he's safer than Langford. Although Langford's a great play as well. He should get plenty of volume. I would go with Lamar and McFadden. But you really can't go wrong with all 3 of these guys.
Yeah, I would try and find a way to get all of them in my lineup, but I do agree with you. It's super close. I have Lamar Miller at 12. I have Langford at 15. And I think the deciding factor is it's PPR, and Langford's not a particularly good receiver. So for me, just slightly towards Lamar Miller. I love McFadden this week, and it's hard to say that as an Eagles fan. But either way, it's 12:06. We gave you about our regular half hour. I'm going to have to figure out what's wrong with my computer for next week, but best of luck to everybody. We'll be back here week 10. Here's the sad thing. Next week there will be less football ahead of us than there is behind us. But either way, still plenty of football left, so good luck to everybody for Pro Football Focus. I'm Jeff, he's Pat, and that's a wrap.